We don't know anything about Cyberpunk Orion, but I think Mike Pondsmith may have just revealed 3 pieces of information regarding both the future of Orion and Cyberpunk. In an interview with the Marry Me Media in December, Pondsmith said quite a bit about Morgan Blackhand, but he also said something interesting about leaving Night City.
Morgan has been in Night City, but you wouldn't find him and notice it. And we have a deal, me and CD, which is they don't get to do something with Morgan until I agree to it. And so right now what's going on is I am building backstory into Red of what Morgan did to get up to 77. And you're going to see him in a couple other places that aren't necessarily Night City, because we're talking about expanding the world a bit. So, everybody would want to see Morgan. What I wanted to do is when he came back, have people go, oh, damn, he's doing that? So that's why you don't see him yet.
He says we're talking about expanding the world a bit, and I believe he's saying him and cdpr are talking about expanding outside of Night City, which is why we're going to see Blackhand elsewhere. So maybe Orion will truly leave Night City, which in a way kind of makes sense. A new game means expanding the world somehow. Maybe expanding on Night City is still a possibility, especially since Night City is really the beating heart of the cyberpunk world. But it seems like they're also looking elsewhere. From this statement, we also know that Pondsmith is building up Blackhand's story to 2077, which once he gets there would probably give cdpr the room to tell part of his story in conjunction with Pondsmith, since it sounds like that's kind of always been the plan. And this isn't the first time that he's mentioned working with cdpr to establish Blackhand's backstory. Back in 2022, he also said on Reddit that him and Patrick are planning a whole crazy backstory about what Morgan Blackhand has been doing since the nuke. Maybe this could be what the anime or live action is about. What better way to build up to Orion than maybe telling the stories of what Morgan Blackhand has been doing and where he's been. Before we get into where that could mean, he says one more important thing.
So Morgan is out and about, and it's not just Morgan, that's all I'll tell you.
He says Morgan is alive and he's not the only one. He's clearly referring to some of his other iconic characters. And I think at the very least, he could be referring to Raish Bartmoss. This was one of R. Talsorian's posts regarding Raish Bartmoss, basically not so subtly saying that the Bartmoss that we see in-game isn't the real Bartmoss, and heavily implying that this person just stole his deck. I think Raish Bartmoss is alive, and maybe like Alt, aka Angel, maybe he's put his consciousness into another body, or he's alive in the net, just like the version of Alt that we meet in 2077. Maybe even what we know of his death isn't the truth. Whatever happened, I think there's more to his story, and I think R. Talsorian does as well. And this post was back in 2023. So whoever Pondsmith is referring to, and whatever he's trying to hint towards, I think we could see more than Morgan Blackhand. Maybe Raish Bartmoss, maybe Spider Murphy, maybe Trace Santiago, or some of his other iconic characters in the future, and maybe in Orion. Now back to what Pondsmith said about expanding outside of Night City. Night City, again, is the beating heart of the cyberpunk world, but the world doesn't end there. I already have a video on Chicago and everything that we know about it, but if the Maglev Network and Phantom Liberty and even the ending of 2077 are showing potential future locations, then the Maglev train connecting to Chicago will be completed in 2080. The Crystal Palace is somewhere Mr. Blue Eyes has his eyes set on. And the moon is where Songbird can go with the help of Mr. Blue Eyes. And we can't forget that that's also where Lucy ended up. The world of cyberpunk is already expanding. And these 3 places have established lore, just enough to set the foundation, while also leaving enough room for cdpr to really fill in the gaps and establish their own world if they want to. Chicago was ravished by the data crash, and then afterwards a plague. And we don't know very much about its recovery. We just know that by 2077, the city is probably a lot larger than Night City. Maybe CDPR could expand on that, building their own world. We also know from their recent job listing that they're wanting to improve crowds. Maybe Chicago could be why. It is larger than Night City, and maybe it has more condensed crowds. There isn't really any other city as established as Night City in the cyberpunk world, because again, it really is the center of the stories. But Chicago is one of those with more world building than most. But Japan, Hong Kong, New York, and several other places around the world have small bits of lore. Maybe CDPR wants a blank slate. Whatever this means, I think in Orion, we will leave Night City. Pondsmith also had some other details to reveal about Morgan Blackhand in this interview. And I'm not going to cover the entire interview, so if you want to see everything that was said, make sure you go check out the actual video, which I have linked in the description below.
Okay, I am working out a new, Morgan will surface. He is alive, but I have about 10 years that Morgan's doing some fairly important stuff. And the best I can say is, imagine if the Batman traveled a lot, you know, and he left Gotham City every so often to deal. And so, yeah, that's kind of, Morgan got out of the war and said, well, I got paid, but this was stupid. So Morgan is out and about, and it's not just Morgan, that's all I'll tell you.
He wants him to resurface, but wants what he's been up to be kind of shocking to players, which is why we haven't seen him just yet. He also confirms that Morgan Blackhand is not Mr. Blue Eyes, and isn't Mr. Blue Eyes' eyes and ears, which is a popular fan theory. When asked if Morgan Blackhand is aware of what happened in 2077, Pondsmith says yes, and he knows about Smasher being taken down by V. He says Blackhand would be laughing his ass off. And he also revealed some additional information about Smasher and Blackhand's showdown the night of the towers. Blackhand used part of Smasher as a shield, as a way to soften his fall from the explosion. He was basically a surfboard for Blackhand to make it to the bottom. So with all of this information, we know how and that Blackhand did survive the tower bombing of 2023, which really isn't all that surprising. Last he was seen was on the roof as the tower collapsed, but after this he went dark. The only rumored Blackhand sighting after this was on the World News Service net site, which mentioned a portly man with a black hand being the only survivor of a massacre. And this massacre involves several Lazarus agents being killed in a shootout in Japantown, and Blackhand was the only survivor. So we know Blackhand was in Night City. Claire also mentions that Blackhand hasn't decided if he's alive or dead. So he is alive and around Night City, but we just can't find him, which is by design.
Ooh, no, Morgan's got, okay, you gotta understand how Morgan works.
Okay.
Morgan is still alive because Morgan years ago made sure that he was boring, not memorable, didn't stand out all that much, and so nobody really would notice. He'd be like the guy who got in the elevator with you and dropped his briefcase.
But he's still a legend, though.
But you gotta know what he looks like, right? Most people, if I'm not wearing my sunglasses and I kept my mouth shut, I'm just another brother walking around. But
if you're in the know,
I'm in the know, you know. But Morgan figured out a long time ago, yeah, you don't want to be James Bond. Everybody knows James Bond. And if your job is to kill people, you don't want them to go, oh my God, you're here to kill me. So Morgan would be typically, you get into an elevator in a corporate building somewhere, and there's a guy who looks like he's, as people like to say, Morgan Blackhand looks like an accountant. That's a slogan at Cal. He actually looks kind of like George Clooney.
Okay.
But, you know, George Clooney is a pretty, you know, good looking, but, you know, average guy. He's not too ugly, not too good looking, you know, and he's going to be great when we start the movie, you know. But Morgan would be the guy who was in the elevator with you and had a bunch of papers and dropped his briefcase, and it opened up, and you would not think other than, wow, what a goofball, as he pulled out a silenced pistol and shot you in the back 4 times.
Brutal.
And then he'd, you go, oh, sorry. And he'd be like, holding you up. You'd go, oh, that's my floor now. And you'd be dying. And everybody else in the elevator would go, what happened? And I'd go, does anybody, hey, take care of him. I think he just had a heart attack. Morgan's out the door.
Oh, wow.
That's Morgan.
So the smoothest.
Morgan's job, as he said, I end up getting hired to kill people because I'm good at it, but I prefer to choose who I'm going to kill.
It's hard to imagine what Blackhand would be up to after the tower bombing, and after thinking what he had just been involved with was stupid. Did he go back and work for Militech again, since he seems to just care about the money and completing the job? Did he continue his work as a secret government agent? And could he even be working with Rosalind Myers at this point? Whatever he's been doing seems important and is also a mystery. Blackhand is also well over 100 by 2077. Depending on when Orion takes place, would he still even be in commission? Surely he can afford to upgrade and live longer. And maybe at his age he'd be like Carrie, an 80-year-old in a 30-year-old's body. But Pondsmith did again say that Blackhand looks like George Clooney. So maybe Blackhand looks like this now. Maybe one day we'll find out for ourselves. 2077 was already building to a potential reveal for Blackhand. And now we're learning that Pondsmith is writing his backstory with cdpr, and that it will involve more than just Blackhand. This backstory is also taking him out of Night City, and will eventually lead into 2077. So could Blackhand be in Orion? I think so. The game is built around the books. Johnny, Alt, Carrie, Rogue are all from the books. And the very first story, Never Fade Away, that was published in 1988. I can't see, and I honestly don't want to see, the games not feature some aspects of the stories that Pondsmith created. Finding Raish Bartmoss's fake body, learning about Johnny's past, meeting Alt, and connecting the dots with the real events are some of my favorite parts of 2077. And I really hope that Orion is another collaboration between the two developers. But let me know what you think. Where do you think that Cyberpunk Orion could take us? Who do you think that we could see from the books? And when do you want Orion to take place? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think, and make sure to go watch the actual full interview, which I have linked below. Thank you for watching. Thank you so much to my channel members. Thank you to my Patreon members. See you guys next time.